This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Parents demand the swift rescue of 140 students kidnapped from a school in Nigeria's Kaduna state. The death toll rises to 4 and at least 80 people are still missing after landslides in Japan. And creating green jobs for the youth in Africa, we feature some ambitious green cities on the continent. Hello and a very warm welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Lindy Mtongana in Nairobi. And with me is Uche Okoronkwo with a preview of your business news.
Thank you, Lindy. And here's a look at what's coming up on Africa Live Bit. Ghana enters the surging social bonds market. And Ugandans turn to agriculture as an alternative source of income due to COVID-19. Of course, all that coming up within the program. For now, it is back to you, Lindy.
Thanks, Uche. Well, we start the hour in Nigeria, where another kidnapping incident has taken place. This time, gunmen have abducted 140 students from a boarding school in northwest Nigeria. This according to a school official. Now, while Kaduna State Police spokesperson Mohammed Jalige confirmed the attack, he refrained from providing official details of the number of pupils missing. The gunmen descended on Bethel Baptist High School in the early hours of Monday. A teacher at the school said 25 of the 165 students abducted managed to escape. The attack is the fourth mass school kidnapping in Kaduna since December.
50 minutes before 7, that some bandits break into the school and go away with the whole students. So I was able to call one of the staff who is in charge of the students from the gate, Mr. Godwin. Mr. Godwin told me that he even escaped because he wanted to break his door, but his neighbor's door was breaking and he was taken away with his family. So I decided to come in. My eldest son called me to tell me that this is what happened and the mommy left. I said, it's okay, let me go after. So I joined them. When I came here, the place was crowded. But I was able to see one of their staff who explained things to me. And he said he also have a cult that midnight. But when I came in, I met the man who was kidnapped with his family, the teacher, one of their teachers, Mr. Nenati. And he was able to escape because all of them were packed with the students. Because of the way he pretended he has a fracture in the leg, so they decided to ask him to come back. I'm just restless. My son is the most senior boy in the school, and in company of all this group, I think anyway.
Well, earlier we spoke to our correspondent Phil Ihaza on the school kidnapping.
What we know at the moment is that parents and relatives of the abducted students are currently agitating and protesting for the government to release or find and rescue their children and missing wards. They've actually blocked a road. It's the Kaduna-Kachia road. It's a major road for travelers along that region. And you know that Kaduna is just less than an hour away from Abuja by flight and about 2 hours by road. And it's quite unfortunate, this incident, because this is not the first time it's happening. And then, of course, the parents will be agitating this much because the governor of the state, Nasir El-Rufai, has insisted that he will not pay ransom or negotiate with the bandits, and that there's an ongoing operation with the police, all the arms of military, that's the army, the Air Force and Navy, to ensure that they pursue the abductors and find and rescue the children. Also, we're hearing from locals at the scene that 2 people have died as a result of the invasion. We also know that the police has confirmed the attack and said that they've rescued at least 26 people currently, including a teacher, 26 students and a teacher, but they've not confirmed the numbers of missing children at the moment. But we're monitoring to see the response from the government or the update as regards the ongoing operation, which is targeted at rescuing all the children safe and unhurt.
Now, the attack on the school came just hours after gunmen ambushed a medical center, also in Nigeria's Kaduna state. Up to 8 people were kidnapped from the National Tuberculosis and Leprosy Center located in Zaria. This counts as the 3rd strike on the hospital. The hit coincided with an attack at a nearby police station where the suspected bandits tried to overrun the officers that were on duty. Kaduna State has been hit by waves of kidnappings for ransom by armed men. A search and rescue operation for the abducted people has been launched.
They all surrounded everywhere when they came. So everywhere was silent. From the gunshot, they entered some of the houses in the quarters and picked some people. Like my sister here, they picked her with her 2 children, with her senior sister and the daughter. 5 of them.
And turning to news from Japan now, 80 people are thought to be missing after a massive landslide in the central region of the country. Officials lowered the number from 113 earlier today after confirming some people had gotten out safely. 4 people have been confirmed dead. Rescuers continue searching for survivors after powerful storms unleashed a wall of water and mud onto homes. Our correspondent Phoebe Amoroso has the latest from Atami.
The road behind me is where the mudslide tore through the center of Atami. News just in, a 4th person has been confirmed dead. Out of that 4, 1 has been confirmed as an 82-year-old woman who was inside her home as it was swept away by the torrent of mud. There are still 80 people whose whereabouts remain unknown. That number was reduced from 113, and the reason for that is there are many holiday villas in this area, so it's been very difficult for the authorities to confirm exactly who is missing. There are currently over 1,500 people working to rescue people who are still trapped. You can see here the self-defense forces are lending a hand to the mission. 550 people have been evacuated, or more than, and several homes have been left without power, without gas, without electricity. One local I spoke to said that she stopped by an evacuation centre yesterday. There were originally 50 elderly people. They have been moved to hotels. The city is taking many precautions because there are still concerns that there could be further mudslides. It was raining heavily yesterday and that hampered some of the rescue efforts. Today the weather has held, but as a precaution, elementary schools and middle schools have been shut today. The authorities are looking to review that. Meanwhile, the rescue work is going on still, and locals remain in shock. One taxi driver I spoke to said that he's never seen anything happen to his hometown like this. He really can't believe it, and the whole community, where many 3 generations live together, remain greatly shocked by the incident. More updates to follow. Phoebe Amoroso, CGTN, Atami.
Now, Egyptian Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli announced on Monday the start of production of the first 1 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines. He also visited the factory where the government vaccination arm is manufacturing the Chinese COVID-19 vaccine created by Sinovac. Here's Adel Al-Mahrawi with more.
Egypt takes a closer step towards officially releasing its domestically produced COVID-19 vaccine. Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli announced a 50% completion of the nation's first 2 million doses of the Chinese Sinovac COVID-19 vaccine. The nation now awaits the final testing for the authorization of the new vaccine from the Egyptian Drug Authority.
The magnitude of demand on the COVID-19 vaccines is immense. That made some of the companies we've contracted to supply us with the vaccines to be behind schedule. From day one, we eyed acquiring the ability of manufacturing the vaccine so that we won't be under any mercy of the global market. In that regard, I would like to thank the great friends, the People's Republic of China, for its full support in this domestic manufacturing.
The government vaccination arm, Vaxera, is currently producing the COVID-19 jab in Cairo. Its production line has the capacity of producing 300,000 doses daily. Egypt is currently in negotiations with the Chinese pharmaceutical company Sinovac Biotech to supply double the contracted volume of the raw biomaterial needed for manufacturing. Madbouli says his government aims to produce 80 million doses of the vaccine before the year ends, instead of the initial plan of 40 million.
We're not expecting this virus to vanish anytime soon. We must have the ability to manufacture because it is likely we will need to keep vaccinating citizens on an annual basis. This will provide a shield against recurrent infections from that disease. We're finalizing another manufacturing facility for Vaxera, which will be more of a pharmaceutical city that has a great ability to produce medicine and vaccines.
Once completed, the new Vaxera complex will be able to add 3 million doses to Egypt's daily capacity to produce all kinds of vaccines. The agreement with China includes full transfer of technology for producing COVID-19 vaccines. That will include producing the raw biomaterial domestically in Egypt.
The beginning of local production of COVID-19 vaccines is a huge relief to the country. The nation's vaccination program has somewhat slowed down because of the global interruption in vaccine supply. This domestic achievement will help Egypt in its plan to vaccinate all education staff and at least 5 million students within the next 2 months before the new school year begins. Adil Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
And let's now go to Mauritius, where the country has received its third batch of China's Sinopharm vaccines. The doses arrived at the main international airport on the island. The first consignment of Sinopharm jabs landed in the country in early April. The second was shipped in late May. Mauritius has now recorded nearly 2,000 COVID-19 cases and 18 deaths from the disease. A second wave of infections that broke out in March this year. Despite that, Mauritius is on track to vaccinate nearly 60% of its roughly 1.3 million population by the end of September this year. This has raised hopes of reopening the country's borders and achieving herd immunity. Well, China, meanwhile, has sped up its vaccination campaign. It's now administered more than 1.3 billion doses on the mainland. The country is racing to reach herd immunity by later this year, as Huang He reports from Beijing.
Last Monday, the number was 1.2 billion, which means it took only about a week to give another 100 million doses. Looking back, it's not so long ago that we heard the news that China had already administered 1 billion doses of COVID-19 vaccines. That was on June the 19th. So you can see currently the country is capable of administering 100 million doses in about 6 days. The nationwide vaccination campaign is open to people aged over 18, and China has also approved the emergency use of domestic inactivated vaccines on people aged 3 to 70. But detailed policies will be formulated for the immunization of this age group based on the specific COVID-19 situation. Health officials and experts have estimated that with a population of over 1.4 billion on the mainland, China needs to vaccinate about 80% of its total population, that is 1.12 billion people, to establish herd immunity against the coronavirus. And this goal is expected to be achieved by the end of this year. While here in Beijing, the capital city earlier announced that it had already fully vaccinated 80% of the city's residents aged 18 or above. That's about 15 million people. And it's the first metropolis in China to announce reaching this critical threshold.
Well, time now for a short break. Here's what's still ahead on the program. Creating green jobs for the youth in Africa. We feature some ambitious green cities on the continent. Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories. Let's have a look. We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
I've been Tunis, Cairo, Juba, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice. More than 50 undocumented Tunisian migrants were rescued by the Tunisian Navy when their makeshift boats capsized while trying to reach the Italian island of Lampedusa. The Interior Ministry also reported that the Tunisian Coast Guard rescued 84 irregular migrants of various nationalities whose boat capsized 28 kilometers northeast of Zarzis. CGTN's Adnan Chouachi brings us that report.
According to the Interior Ministry, the migrants aged between 3 and 40 are from Bangladesh, Sudan, Eritrea, Egypt, Chad and Nigeria. They said that they had set off from the coast of Zuara in Libya but failed to reach Europe.
I would like to acknowledge Tunisian government for accepting us here as a migrant and all the effort they have been giving to all the migrants here, especially in Nigeria. We really benefit a lot. Sometimes there is issuance of card so we can get our food and other of our need. So we really appreciate that.
Many migrants revealed that they had spent several months in detention centers in Libya. They opted for irregular migration when they were released by the Libyan authorities.
The difficulties we are facing here as a migrant is the issue of identity. Yeah, most of us, we lost our identity in Libya, Algeria, especially in Libya where there is war. For example, I myself, I lost all my identity there. I was in prison for 6 months in the Libya, and after which I lost everything I have. So I have to run to Tunisia for rescue. And I'm happy that Tunisia is giving me the rescue which I came for.
The representative of the UN Refugee Agency in Tunisia explained that the wave of refugees and migrants will continue in the Mediterranean basin and the world due to the negative repercussions of the pandemic.
There are local and global challenges. The number of refugees is increasing, as well as the number of migrants in an unprecedented manner. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a highly negative impact on their conditions and the host countries like Tunisia. Tunisian authorities are doing their best, despite all the difficulties.
Tunisian authorities announced that the phenomenon of irregular migration has intensified this week due to good weather conditions in Libya, Algeria and Tunisia. According to the Tunisian Forum for Economic and Social Rights, hundreds of African irregular migrants have already reached the Italian coast this month. Men, women and children are fleeing difficult economic and social situations as well as insecurity. Adnan Chouachi, CGTN, Tunis.
The UN-backed Libyan Political Dialogue Forum is sparking controversy. It announced a list of recommended requirements for candidates to run for president. But if implemented, the criteria could see some potential candidates, like Libyan National Army Commander Khalifa Haftar, kept out of the political picture. Now, in response, the Eastern-based parliament says it would work on its own draft law for candidate criteria. Here's Adil Al-Makhri with more.
Less than 200 days remain on the presumed Libyan elections on December 24, yet Libyans are far from having a clear path to the crucial vote. Defining the presidential candidates' requirements is fueling political tension. As soon as the Consultancy Committee for the UN's Libyan Political Dialogue Forum released a list of recommendations, some in the Eastern-based parliament threatened to issue their own requirements.
These elections will definitely change some positions and therefore affect the balance of power. It's why there are some who are working on hindering this process from taking place unless it can guarantee its positions or the political gains they have achieved.
The UN talks in Geneva recommended a ban for dual nationals, a minimum age of 35 years and a clear criminal record. Candidates' parents and spouses must also be Libyan. The criteria could stand against people like Khalifa Haftar, the commander of the Eastern Libyan National Army Forces, from running.
The reason behind this debate about a presidential candidate's requirement is to enable dual citizens to run for public posts. The other issue is to allow military personnel to run without resigning from their military posts. That is a recommendation from the UN-backed talks. If they win, they are then considered resigned. If they lose, they can resume their posts. That's unprecedented. It could represent a great obstacle to the elections.
This week's talks have also discussed the parliament's structure. The UN meeting is recommending to have a two-chambers legislative house, one based in the eastern city of Benghazi, while the other in the south. Libyans appear to be favoring enforcing a list voting system to preserve a representation quota for women and minorities in the parliament.
Many fundamental issues are still being debated. Libyans don't know whether they will be voting directly to elect a president or will an elected parliament nominate him. Less than 6 months remain on the December elections, and many indications point out that Libyans are still not ready to hold the elections on time. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
6 African cities have committed to the recently launched Green Cities Action Program. The Food and Agriculture Organization-led program aims to improve urban cities through innovative ideas that will make them more sustainable, improve food security, and ensure better lives for all. The Kenyan cities of Nairobi and Kisumu have been selected for the pilot phase of the program. CGTN's Nick Mudimba tells us more.
It's hard to believe that this was once a dam site. But now the Michuki Park, right at the heart of Nairobi, is now among the cleanest green spaces in Kenya, a serene environment that's become quite popular with city residents since it was opened last August.
It's a nice place na ni kusafi.
It's a nice place and it's clean, so peaceful at the same time and secure. The serenity cools your brain down.
Niliamua kuja hapa juu hii place, by the way, it's so good.
I decided to come here because this place is so cool, very clean, and you feel relaxed. And because there's no dumping site, I come to pray from this place.
Hakuna dumping site, hadi watu wenye wanakujanga kuomba.
The park has not only beautified and changed the dynamics of Nairobi's city, but it has created jobs for many who maintain it. It costs $1 to enter the park that now sees dozens of visitors every day. Such initiatives are what the Food and Agriculture Organization is pushing for through its Green Cities campaign. Launched in September 2020, the initiative aims to improve urban areas through innovative solutions that will enhance not just the environment but also provide economic opportunities. According to the FAO, 55% of the world's population lives in cities today, up from 40% 15 years ago. In another 30 years, in 2050, at least 68% will be in the urban setup, most of them living in low-income countries, especially in Africa and Asia. Urbanization in these areas is accompanied by high levels of poverty, unemployment, and insecurity. The Green Cities program hopes to change this by encouraging authorities to involve young people, local entrepreneurs, and innovators to find solutions in line with the times, including climate change.
It's not too late to make peace with nature. There's no choice. The choice is either we make peace with nature or we perish. We perish as humanity and of course other species.
When we talk about urbanization, it is related to other things. We can't say we only have to do urbanization. It is related to desertification. It is related to hunger, food. It is related to digital connectivity. It's related to energy. It's related to electricity. It's related to health. So environment. And so I think we must start thinking all these concepts together. And I think on top of it is environment and urbanization. Because if we solve these two things, others will follow.
Kenya's Nairobi and Kisumu have been chosen for the pilot phases of the program, with another 4 cities, Praia in Cape Verde, Antananarivo in Madagascar, Quelimane in Mozambique, and Kigali in Rwanda also signing up for the program. FAO is targeting at least 1,000 cities will have joined the initiative by 2030. According to environmental stakeholders, after securing such green spaces, key mandate now will be the consistency of maintaining them from environmental factors and, of course, without a doubt, the human factors. Nick Mudimba, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Meanwhile, the South African city of Cape Town is forging ahead with plans to become the greenest city on the continent. Cape Town hopes to do this through innovation and technology in building practices and policies to spur economic development and boost biodiversity. The city hopes the net result will be a city that is green, sustainable and resilient to environmental changes associated with climate change. CGTN's Travis Andrews has more.
The city of Cape Town wants to be the greenest and most sustainable city in Africa, an accolade it has been pursuing for years. The momentum, though, is slowly gaining, and the mother city is transforming to a greener and more sustainable city. It is doing this by driving policies that embrace more sustainable building practices, where resilience towards environmental changes are one of its key tenets.
We have in our development plan, which we call in South Africa the IDP, which is set every 5 years and assessed every year. One of the focused intention is to develop a sustainable and resilient city. And you can't do that without being a green city. So we have quite a stringent and a interactive set of policy that enable not only the organization but the whole of the community to follow suit in better our sustainability.
The city hopes more citizens will also embrace new innovations in building technology, which can also assist in going green. My Clean Green Home is one example that is being used to drive home that message to the broader public. The home is fully sustainable and constructed from shipping containers. It also uses solar power and has a vertical food garden meant to allow homeowners to grow their own food. By creating more urban parks, community gardens and boosting biodiversity, more parts of Cape Town are also becoming green.
We have a successful stewardship program where we define a biodiversity high value area, which is not necessarily cities owned, but it's owned by one of our citizens, and they will then, in lieu of a ownership agreement, protect that area, and we manage it jointly.
The city of Cape Town believes the move to become Africa's greenest city provides a strong business case not just for residents, but also for international visitors who are looking to live and invest in sustainable cities. Now, by doing that, they hope to achieve some ambitious goals, including becoming carbon neutral by 2050. Travis Andrews, CGTN, Cape Town.
Well, Egypt is implementing a mega project aimed at cultivating over 840,000 hectares of land over 2 years. The vertical expansion project, as it's commonly known, is increasing the green segment of the largely desert North African nation and improving its food security. Yasser Hakim has more from Cairo.
Egyptians have always lived and cultivated along the banks of the River Nile, leaving most of the country vacant. But authorities are keen to push Egyptians out of the congested Nile Strip and are spearheading efforts to cultivate over 2 million fidans in the desert.
The vertical expansion is in different areas. There are projects in the North Coast, projects in Sinai and in Toshka. It includes the new Delta project, which covers 1 million fidans in 4 governorates in the North Coast. It will be divided into plots for large investors, for small investors and individuals to grow strategic crops, crops for export, to be self-sufficient in some crops, and to maintain food security.
The project is aimed at establishing a second delta that equals the old delta along the River Nile. Afifi Nail is one of the farmers at Qalyubia region who grows corn and vegetables on his 50 fidans of land. He believes the new project will benefit farmers because of the technical support provided by the government.
I
am now using updated irrigation systems introduced by the government. It saves water consumption, especially in wheat, which consumes a lot of water. There is also better quality of seeds provided to us. I use it here and it made higher and better yields than the older seeds. More exports from these projects will improve income for the farmer. The higher quality and yield along with the government's improved marketing of our goods will make it more profitable for us.
According to officials from Egypt's Agriculture Ministry, the benefits of the mega project are more comprehensive.
If we take 1 million fedans and cultivate 60% of it with strategic crops like wheat, we can produce 1,800,000 tons of wheat, which will cover food deficit by 30%. Agriculture contributes 11.5% of the GDP, and this project will raise agricultural production to 30% of GDP. Labor in agriculture accounts to 25% of the total workforce. With the new project, numbers will increase to more than 33 or 34% of workforce in the market. We are trying to grow self-sufficiency and reach 60 to 70% of wheat consumption. We are already self-sufficient in rice and soon in sugar and oriental corn, as well as in vegetable oils and fruits.
The plan is not just an attempt to cultivate land, but also to encourage Egyptians to move into new cities and villages around the green areas.
We can see they're developing the rural areas and the villages by improving water, electricity and all services, as well as developing better roads and housing. It's a national project that will benefit the youth who can take a small plot and a house in the new cities. For farmers like me, we can invest on a larger scale from the 2 million fedans on offer.
Work has begun on the project with 200,000 fedans already cultivated, and it could reach 350,000 by the end of 2021. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Well, let's now go to Uche for your latest business news.
Thank you, Lindy. And coming up on Africa Live Biz. Ghana enters the surging social bonds market. And Ugandans turn to agriculture as an alternative source of income due to COVID-19.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Well, let's start off in Ghana. The country is planning to issue green and social bonds of up to $2 billion by November. This will make it the first African nation to sell a debt in order to fund development programs. Now, a social bond is a debt instrument used to raise funds for projects with positive social outcomes, such as in education, healthcare, and food security. Its issuance is on an upward trajectory globally as investors combine profit and mission to tackle inequalities. Now, this type of bond reached record levels last year, increasing about sevenfold. This year, it is expected to grow by 6% to $150 billion in funds raised. The African Development Bank has been active in this space. It launched a social bond program back in 2017 and has so far issued about 5 of such bonds, the latest being a $3 billion debt instrument to fight COVID-19. Meanwhile, job losses and closures of small businesses due to COVID-19 has forced a number of Ugandans into agriculture. That is according to a report by the World Bank. Now, the significant shift to agriculture in response to the crisis has, however, heightened land degradation and deforestation in the East African nation. Here's Hilary Ayesiga reporting.
Prosper Tuhaise is the manager of a betting firm in the capital, Kampala. Twice the government imposed restrictions to curb the spread of COVID-19. Betting parlors were among the many businesses forced to close. And like many others, Tuhaise had to find something else to do. He decided to put some of his savings into rearing chicken.
There is no income because we are not pressing any bet, which we get money from. Yet, we have to maintain some of the staff, paying them, and also premises we are renting. So we are spending every day, not earning any income.
It has not been an easy transition for Tuhaise. With most of the businesses shut down because of the pandemic, Tuhaise spends much of his time here. He says rearing chicken is helping him to feed his family. Tuhaise is hoping to make a profit from rearing chicken, but also from the other crops he grows on the farm.
The good thing you can do without betting in lockdown, but you cannot do without food. So farming, that the food production remains whatsoever, whether there's lockdown, whether there's pandemic, whether there's anything. So that's where the only business you can do when there is total lockdown, because people must keep eating.
Figures from Uganda's Bureau of Statistics show that 70% of Ugandans are involved in agriculture. According to a June 2021 World Bank report, the significant shift of Ugandans to agriculture in response to the crisis has heightened land degradation and deforestation. That too is a concern for environmentalists.
This whole area was forested about 30, 40 years ago. There's nothing left. There's a little patch over there and a little bit of swamp there. So forests are being cut down seriously, even in Uganda, even in forest reserves.
According to Global Forest Watch, Uganda has lost 7.6% of its tree cover in the last 18 years. The government is now encouraging tree planting in degraded areas. For the new farmers like Tuhaise, without work now, putting food on the table during this period remains a priority. Hilara Yisiga, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
Now, the COVID-19 Delta variant is wreaking havoc in South Africa. Last week, President Cyril Ramaphosa placed the country on alert level 4. The restrictions are tougher, especially for Gauteng province, where the variant is particularly prominent. One of the restrictions include no leisure travel in and out of the province for 2 weeks. Well, Sumitra Naidu takes a look at how the tourism sector is faring.
The tourism industry across South Africa is struggling to stay alive. While the industry across the country is being affected, Gauteng is worst hit. No travel is allowed to and from the province for 2 weeks.
The fact that Gauteng residents or people who live in Gauteng or citizens are not allowed to travel outside of the province, it simply means that you are restricting 60% of domestic travel because it all comes from this province. So it is devastating. A lot more people are gone back at home now, sitting and waiting until the 11th of this month. And a whole lot more businesses are closed until such time that is viable for them to open. So it's going to be devastation.
Alert level 4 of this lockdown will only be lifted after the president gives an update. Until then, restaurants can only do takeaways, no sit-down patrons. Pubs, bars and nightclubs are closed, and all liquor sales are prohibited at retail and in establishments.
We have shut down the seated restaurant, which obviously all our waiters and so on are impacted. The kitchen is impacted. We hope that the next 14 days is all that it will take. A longer situation like that means the tourism industry will cripple even more, and many of the smaller businesses might not survive it, and that's the harsh reality of this pandemic.
While South Africans remain in limbo, smaller establishments are battling to stay open. Hotels and other venues are running at massive losses as people stay away.
We have seen some cancellations, Gauteng being one of our core markets. People not being able to travel for leisure does have an impact. We've had a couple of postponements. We're very thankful that not all of them are cancellations. In some cases, however, they are cancellations. We've all been greatly affected by the pandemic and the level 4. Just as we were getting back on our feet, it's a little bit of a step back. However, we do realize the necessity of containing this latest breakout.
We don't know if it's going to be longer than that. And that's what's, driving businesses to close. If you look at Sun International, they decided to close their hotels and resorts, because it just doesn't make any business sense to remain open. So the lack of certainty and the lack of vaccination, the massive rollout of vaccination, is having a huge impact on our industry.
The United Nations Conference on Trade and Development released a report this week placing South Africa's tourism industry amongst the worst affected in developing nations. South Africa ranked third after Turkey and Ecuador, largely because of travel restrictions, poor virus containment and a poor economic environment. Sumitra Naidu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
And to some international news. For a while, it seemed as though Chinese tech IPOs in the U.S. market had slowed from a flood to a trickle. But the momentum is back now, and investors there are warming up to the Chinese tech companies again. Here's Ying Junyi with more.
Chinese technology companies are flocking to the U.S. for IPOs once again. More than 30 Chinese tech companies raised more than $10 billion on Wall Street in the first half of the year, and another 30 or more are expected in the next 6 months.
Many of these companies received early funding in their early stages from US dollar investors or from US dollar private equity funds. These private equity funds are seeking an exit, and that exit will be better expressed if these companies go public in the U.S.
The boom of Chinese tech IPOs in the U.S. is driven by a desire to tap the deep pools of liquidity available there. Shou says many Chinese tech firms have managed to secure relatively elevated valuations in the U.S. market. The IPO regulations there are also resulting in a current cluster of flotations on the U.S. exchanges.
Obviously, many of them are relying on the 2020 annual reports to be included in their prospectus, and they have a grace period of roughly 9 months, meaning they need to submit the IPO within 9 months. Otherwise, they will have to prepare the first half semi-annual report in order to supplement the prospectus.
The relative attractiveness of the U.S. market has also been increased by recently tightened criteria for listing in China. In fact, more than 90 companies have withdrawn IPO application in China this year.
Regulators are paying more attention to IPO applications and requiring stricter information disclosure. They are also spot-checking some of the IPO candidates. The revised securities law has an increased emphasis on protecting the interests of small and individual investors.
The number and scrutiny of listing hearings in China have increased, and the new law levies tougher penalties for any market violations. Ying Junyi, ICS for CGTN, Shanghai.
And still in China, the first ever batch of esports lovers with an actual diploma in the subject are graduating from university. Now, esports are often considered a hobby or pastime than a serious topic of study. But attitudes are gradually changing. So are the graduates likely to become the next professional esports stars? Well, Xie Hongshu has that answer.
Liu Xiangze is among the first batch of graduates from a new major in digital entertainment, popularly known by the public as esports. But none of his classmates have ended up working in esports, let alone becoming professional players.
We are not trained to play games well, just like other sports. The golden age for professional players is between 16 to 18. They had the best energy and reflexes. We were already too old for that when we entered university.
He says professional players are just one element of esports, just as esports are one sector in the wider gaming industry. So playing games is not part of their studies, unlike what people normally imagine.
Instead, we were taught how to design funnier games, how to program, and how to manage esports competitions. Everything we need to know about the gaming industry. We don't play games that well, but we sure love games and know a lot about them.
The program seems to be well received by the industry. Most of their classmates have received solid job offers, not necessarily in the esports sector, but from major game developers.
Very few graduates are directly engaged in esports-related work, but they are still in the industry, because games are the outreaches of esports. Rich game companies are particularly short of design talents for esports games, and the big companies are more attractive. It's just a matter of very realistic choices.
Universities in China began to offer degrees in esports in 2017. It was in a bid to have a stake in the development of global gaming industry. Today, over 20 Chinese universities have esports majors on offer.
A report by a gaming industry association says last year China saw a 44% increase in the market size of esports, with nearly 500 million users in total. That's more than 1/3 of the whole population.
Esports is just like any other traditional sports, but with a much bigger audience. A growing culture industry of this size will need a lot of high-level talents who know both games and management. I believe the major is very practical in the long run, and it will be very helpful for the development of the industry.
CGTN 谢洪洲，北京。
And that's all for now on Africa Live Biz, but still to come on Global Business Africa, more on the oil sector as Egypt, Jordan and Iraq revive plans to pump crude from Baghdad to Cairo through Oman. Of course, all that coming up top of the hour, and more news with Lindy Mtongana right after the short break.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. We start here in Kenya. On a mission to serve by cutting hair, a young entrepreneur's dream to start a mobile barbershop has come to fruition. As CGTN's Daniel Arab Moy reports, Ali Barkat's barbershop on wheels reaches customers wherever they are.
Yes. It's about 6 in the morning. Ali Barkat is set to meet his first client of the day. It will take approximately 30 minutes to reach his client. Barkat must maneuver through Nairobi's heavy traffic, one of his worst nightmares.
Because I can't cover enough people in a day because of the moving around in traffic. So I have to have my first client by as early as 5 a.m. You know, and because of curfew now I find myself having my last client as late as 8 p.m.
Barkat is determined to keep his mobile barbershop dream alive.
So I have to sacrifice that sleep, you know, just to be able to cover more people.
He finally meets his first client of the day, Alan Styles.
He's been cutting my hair for a while. There's a certain level of convenience and professionalism that he carries. Because you know nowadays, by the time you commute to a fixed barbershop and get a seat and get cuts, you end up losing a lot of time.
Obviously it's important for me to keep time because Mr. Allen has already scheduled himself, you know, so it's always best just to keep time so that even it can be more convenient for him.
Barkat is one of Kenya's innovative youth changing the game when it comes to barbers.
The things I truly appreciate is when every service is handled professionally and dedicated and committed, because I believe that's how industries grow. If we put in our dedication, our work and our commitment to the service.
During the lockdown, Barkat decided to convert his van into a mobile barbershop. He charges $30 for a haircut, wash, and face cleansing services.
That's been good for me because I'm constantly, every day I'm meeting new people, you know, going to new locations, you know, places I had never been to, you know, so yeah, man.
Barkat is also very particular when it comes to appearance while on the job.
As a man, a suit makes me feel confident about myself, you know. Number two, ever since I thought of being a barber, I always pictured myself in a suit, you know, with the suspenders, just a half coat and a shirt, you know. So it's always been my niche, you know.
Barkat hopes to expand his business by modifying a larger van exclusively for women and women alone. Daniel Arab Moy, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Coming up in your sports news, up next. Guinea's Kung Fu